This past semester in university, I transitioned to writing digital notes on my iPad Air with an Apple Pencil. I had always been curious about this method of note taking and finally bit the bullet and purchased an iPad for myself this summer. Here are my thoughts on the transition to digital notes and a quick little flip through of those notes from my previous semester as a third-year university student. So before making the transition to digital notes, I was pretty lost in the note-taking world. I spent some regretted time writing word for word verbatim from my professor's lecture slides in my first year, and then switched to typing on my computer in my second year, and now use a method that involves a combination of handwritten notes, typing, and iPad notes that has proven to be pretty successful for me this last semester. Here are some note-taking supplies that I use along with my iPad. First, I have a iPad Air 3. I chose this instead of the iPad Pro mainly because of the price difference and have been pretty happy with the purchase. And along with it, I use the first generation Apple Pencil that I have unfortunately lost the charging port cover on, so the aesthetics of it are lacking at the moment, but I will get a new cover eventually. On it, I use a basic pencil grip that I purchased at the dollar store. I found that my hand would frequently get hot, resulting in a slippery grip on the Apple Pencil, so this was an inexpensive remedy for that. I also use the notability for all of my note taking. I did a ton of research on GoodNotes versus Notability before purchasing one or the other, and honestly found a pretty equal split on people liking Notability and GoodNotes. I also use this case purchased from Amazon that definitely isn't necessary, but is incredibly handy to prop up vertically and then also to prop it up a little bit to prevent wrist strain while writing on it. Alright, so next let's chat about some of my favorite things about using my iPad to create digital notes in university. So first off, it saves a lot of paper, especially with the amount of practice problems and textbooks examples I like to do in math-based classes. It definitely saves a lot of paper. So using Notability, and I'm sure with other note-taking apps, my handwritten notes are now searchable. Although this is a further add-on purchase in Notability, I found it very helpful to get the extra little add-on. I can now search through entire folders for keywords or just through separate Notability documents. So very helpful. I would highly recommend getting this little add-on. With digital notes, all of my note-taking supplies are now in one writing utensil. I love that I don't have to go to the effort of pulling out all of my highlighters and pens just to add some color to my handwritten notes. And using digital notes, I can also easily include photos. In courses where there are diagrams or graphs, it is extremely handy to include visual aids to facilitate the note-taking and topic understanding. You can also easily add portions of textbook questions if you don't want to write it out all the way, instead of going through the effort of printing it and then gluing it into your paper notes. So next, I'm going to be sharing with you some cons I have to digital note-taking, or sometimes that I don't actually use my iPad in school for note-taking. So the first main one is when I am creating summary sheets. So these are my favorite things to do in science math-based classes. I like to do one summary sheet for each unit. I do this on white printer paper and then I put it into a page protector into one binder. I find this is so satisfying, and I like to create a summary sheet for each unit and then where I compile the most important items. This process is usually done after learning the material and writing my initial notes, and usually my initial notes are on my iPad, but then after that I like to create this separate sheet on paper, and it must be on paper. I don't know what it is, it's just so nice to have a tangible piece of paper to refer back to frequently, and I like that I can have them all laid out in front of me and I don't have to flip through or search through on a device. The next downfall to digital notes is that it is still not paper, and I still don't get the satisfaction that I do when I am writing on paper. I know that you can get matte screen protectors for iPads and stuff, which I do plan on getting, but I still don't think it will be the same. I know that my iPad often gets pretty hot if I use it for a long time, so that's not how paper acts, and my hand gets tired of resting on the iPad when it's starting to get hot. So maybe that's just me, but it's not paper, and I still do like to have all of my highlighters and pens in front of me. There's something satisfying about that. And the last major downfall to digital note-taking is the amount of screen time that I already have in a day, because all of my classes are either pre-recorded lectures online or on Zoom. I'm looking at a screen for many, many hours in a day, and sometimes it is nice to give your eyes a little bit of a break and look at paper instead of an iPad, but I guess there's pros and cons to each different method. And finally, we are on the actual notes flip through. So I don't use digital notes for all my classes. I don't find that it's necessary, but for example, right here, I'm showing you all of my chemistry notes. This is the class that I used it mostly for. What I like to do is read through the textbook, make notes from my textbook, and then it's also very handy to import PowerPoint slides from my computer or from the online school learning interface and annotate on those. That's super helpful to do during lectures, and then you don't have to print things out all the time, because that was a big problem for me. And then you can just focus on what the lecturer is saying instead of copying everything down because you already have it. So as you can see, I have a lot of different notes here. I like to combine my note categories by unit. So in this unit, I have my digital handwritten notes, which you're seeing right now, and then also the PowerPoint slides that I mentioned earlier. Another thing that I like to do is when I'm doing practice problems for the first time, like textbook ones or provided ones by the class or professor, I like to do these on my iPad so that I can figure it out there. And then I kind of have made my own answer key so that when I do go back studying, like a couple months down the road, when I'm studying for a midterm or final exam, I can refer back to those practice problem pages for like a little answer key. So I find that really helpful. And over here is a little midterm review prep thing. So my writing here is very neat. I'm very proud of it. But I used the little magnifying glass feature on Notability. I'm pretty sure you can do this on GoodNotes too, where you're just writing at the bottom of the page on like a magnifying screen to make your writing a lot neater. I use this sometimes depending on how neat I want my writing. Sometimes it's a little bit fun, but most of the time I'd say I don't use it because I like to kind of be able to look at my entire screen, and I'm pretty good with just zooming in on the paper. That seems to work well for me. And another thing that I kind of just noticed right now is that I seem to do my textbook like notes on white paper and then my practice problems on black paper, which is kind of cool. I think that the black paper looks really sharp with the white pen on top, especially with all the colored highlighters and stuff like that. So it kind of goes back and forth, but I say for most of them, like 90% of them, I use some type of like dotted grid. This is really helpful because it still kind of looks like a blank page, but you still can get like the guidance of the lines on there. So that's been my favorite, but there's lots of different options in Notability at least, and I'm sure in GoodNotes as well for different paper type, paper colors, paper styles, but this has been my favorite. It looks the least busy, but still giving me some guidance. So here I'm moving to a different subject. As you can see, I have some lecture notes over here. I didn't have a textbook for this class, so I just had to make my own notes during the lecture. They do look pretty during lecture because the professor goes through the material pretty slowly, so that's how I'm able to make it look decent and still catch on. But for some other classes where we just like zoom through the material, I wouldn't be able to make like decent looking notes at all, and I would have to go in later and make my notes look nice. But in this class over here, I had lots of different diagrams for like anatomy and stuff, so that is incredibly handy to have on an iPad so you can easily annotate on them, color on them. And I also had some like anatomy textbook coloring pages that were provided by my professor, so I used that in here too to color in and to kind of just practice naming stuff and so on. Alright, and that concludes today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of more school related video. I know it's a little bit different from my usual art ones, but I hope you enjoyed regardless. So thank you so much for watching. I would love to chat with you in the comments, and that is it for today. I will see you in my next video.